Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. Welcome to Three Buck Theater. And you know, it being near the end of March 1999, I got back to thinking about the movies I saw 20 years ago when they came out in theaters, right? Like, end of March 1999, I had just turned 17 years old. I could finally go see R-rated movies. And then I thought back to the catalog of other films that have come out during that time period that I wanted to just take a look back at the month of March 1999 and go over its releases and how they did theatrically, as well as what the Rotten Tomatoes scores are. And you'd be amazed at what movies came out just in this month, not including January or February of 1999. And trust me, I will do those as well, because She's All That hit 20 years. She's All That hit 20 damn years, and like no one talked about it. That movie is like the generational movie of my graduating class. You know what I mean? So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a series like this, because I just genuinely love movies. I love talking about them, and I love looking back through the lens of time to kind of see how they how they did and how they ultimately ended up. And so first things first, what we have here for the release of just March 5th, 2000, or not 2000, but 1999, is Analyze This. Now, I totally didn't get the chance to see this in theaters because I wasn't quite 17, but man, this movie is hysterical, and it's hard to think that it's 20 years old without any kind of fanfare from Hollywood. This is a classic. Billy Crystal, Robert De Niro, directed by Harold Ramis. This movie should have had a re-release this month, but it completely didn't. But here's what it says here for the box office mojo of it. It did have a total gross of $106 million. This is just domestic. Worldwide pulled in $176 million, which is obviously the reason why Warner Brothers decided it wanted to give it a sequel with Analyze That from, I believe, 2003, which they made it PG-13 and it wasn't anywhere near as good. So we can see why that one kind of fell off the radar. But even over here on Rotten Tomatoes, they've given it a 70% not certified fresh, which is interesting. Not certified fresh, but an audience score of only 62%, with 224,000 people having rating it. Makes me really wonder, what the hell are they watching? This movie is a classic, because the critical consensus here is Analyze This is a satisfying comedy with great performances, which is absolutely true. Now, the next movie is Cruel Intentions, and this was the big steamy thriller when I was a young lad, when I was 17. This is the one where Sarah Michelle Gellar made out with Selma Blair, and it was in the trailers. Reese Witherspoon, you know, and Ryan Phillippe. This is kind of the film to watch if you were a high schooler in 1999. I previously mentioned She's All That, but trust me, Cruel Intentions was definitely the big one. According to its box office mojo, it pulled in a domestic gross of $38,328,567, with a worldwide gross of $76,250,000. I do expect that to change a little bit, considering the fact that they are doing a 20-year anniversary screening of it, I believe, in the next couple weeks. So check your local theater listings for that. But over here on Rotten Tomatoes, what we see is it's got a 54%. From the tomato meter, and 81% of audiences liked it. Like I said, if you were a high schooler around that time, this was the movie to see. Like the part in the movie where Sarah Michelle Gellar says, "You can put it anywhere," and he goes, "Ooh," that was a part where everyone's like, "She's talking about butt stuff." Right? Back in the 90s, butt stuff was almost unheard of. But the critical consensus here is this darkly comic drama and its attractive young cast are easy on the eyes, but uneven performances and an uninspired script conspire to foil Cruel Intentions. If you didn't know, this was ultimately a remake of a late 80s movie called Dangerous Liaisons. From my understanding about this particular film, the writer-director went to Universal, pitched them on the concept. They loved it. They gave him everything he wanted because he demanded to write it and direct it himself. And unfortunately, it ended up kind of falling by the wayside critically, but it is fondly remembered positively by fans. And it went on to do 2 straight to DVD, or well, at the time, VHS sequels. And yes, they are very, very, very bad, as one would assume that they would be. Now we get what I believe is probably the most underrated movie of this month, not to mention one of the most underrated movies of 1999, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. While ultimately released in the UK in 1998, it didn't hit theaters here in the United States until March of 1999. And even then, it didn't even hit its full stride until coming out on VHS in the summer of 1999, which is when I got to watch it for the first time. And believe me, that first time turned into many times. Even on the very first night, my best friend and I watched it after we rented it from Hollywood Video. According to Box Office Mojo here, it had a domestic gross of 3.7 million with no worldwide gross statistics, which is very weird considering that it did release in the UK in 1999, or 1998, so you figure there would have been something there. But Rotten Tomatoes here gives it a 75% certified fresh rating and a 93% audience score. Obviously, yes, Guy Ritchie's first outing gave us not only Jason Statham, who I'm a huge, gigantic fan of now for 20 years as a result of this movie. We also got Jason Fleming and Vinnie Jones and a number of other great things out of this film that has never fully been able to be replicated by not only Guy Ritchie, but Hollywood itself. Saying here, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is a grimy, twisted, funny twist on the Tarantino hip gangster formula. And it truly, truly, truly is. Up next was Baby Geniuses. Yeah. Baby Geniuses, March 12th, 2000. Not 2000, 1999. I keep getting screwed up on the years. But seriously, 1999 saw the release of Baby Geniuses. This was meant to be a big family movie with Kathleen Turner and Christopher Lloyd. It's about as terrible as you might think. It's about as terrible as you might think, trust me. According to the Box Office Mojo here, it pulled in a domestic gross of 27 million and a worldwide gross of only 36 million. I didn't see this movie until my parents rented it for my siblings who were age appropriate for it back in 1999, and it was pretty terrible, but it was released March 12th. With a critical with a tomato meter score of just 2%. And an audience score of 23%, saying here, flat direction and actors who look embarrassed to be on screen make Baby Geniuses worse than the premise suggests, which is very true. But even that 36 million worldwide, and I'm sure it did well on home video, went on to give it a couple sequels, if I do recall, which is pretty damn sad. Then this was the movie to me, The Corruptor here. This is the very first R-rated movie I bought a ticket for. I was so stoked to see Chow Yun-fat and Mark Wahlberg teaming up on the big screen at this R-rated violent movie. And you know what? I wasn't disappointed. I don't know how well it stood the test of time over 20 years, but man, I definitely loved it back in the day. According to Box Office Mojo, it had a total gross of 15 million domestically and a worldwide gross of 24 million. But it only had a production budget of, 25 million. So it didn't break even, but this is the 90s, and I believe they really were fudging the books on that one. But anyway, the critical consensus here on Rotten Tomatoes is 48%, with a 43% audience score, saying this uninspiring cop thriller doesn't measure up to Chow Yun-fat's Hong Kong work, which is very true. Very true. Chow Yun-fat and John Woo, their Chinese work is fantastic. It wasn't a terrible movie, but it was mid-90s Mark Wahlberg. And I think that around that time, it was a little bit different. Like, I can't remember if this one came out before or after The Big Hit, which is probably my favorite 90s Mark Wahlberg movie, given just the absurdity of the concept and the cast of characters surrounding him in the film. But this movie was definitely fun in and of itself. But yeah, again, it hasn't really stood the test of time, at least according to Rotten Tomatoes. Now, this is one I don't remember coming out to theaters. The Rage Carry 2 was one that must completely have slipped past me. But this ultimately went on to do okay, considering that we've even got Brad, the eldest son from Home Improvement here, saying every teen thinks terrible thoughts, hers are deadly. And of course, this was meant to be, well, it is a sequel to Carrie, which didn't need a sequel or a remake, but hey, this is Hollywood and originality goes to die. But according to Box Office Mojo, this 21 million budgeted movie ended up going on to gross 17 million domestically, with no worldwide release given or totals given here. But still, I mean, that's not too bad, I guess, right? I mean, horror movies probably did okay on home video, and I don't know what it did worldwide. But again, as far as usually these type of sequels never fully make it to home video. It's like American Psycho released in 2000, then they did American Psycho 2 starring Mila Kunis and Will Shatner, and that ended up just going straight to DVD. So, you know, anything can happen with these, really. This is over here on Rotten Tomatoes. It gives it a 20% critical consensus from the tomato meter and a 32% audience score, with the general consensus being as disposable as its predecessors as its predecessor is indispensable. The Rage 2 mimics the arc of Stephen King's classic story without adding anything of value. And that's kind of what I got from watching the trailer and you know, but hey, 17 million. Some people out there really, really liked it. Now we've got this one, and this was a big movie. This was a big thing. This was a big deal back in 1999. Wing Commander, starring Freddie Prinze Jr. Again, She's All That had opened up literally less than 2 months before the release of Wing Commander. Also starring Matthew Lillard. This is coming off of Scream and the popularity off of that. Saffron Burrows, who I think was just kind of getting her footing at the time, and to check, whatever. I can't even pronounce the guy's name. This was meant to be the big video game adaptation, right? By this time, we had seen Mortal Kombat, which was good. Super Mario Brothers, which I think is an excellent movie, but I'm like very much in that like lone category. Double Dragon came and went, and other video game adaptations that ultimately were trying to be made around that time. This one was kind of meant to be the Star Wars killer, so to speak, considering that I think even Mark Hamill had bits in the video game franchise. But going on here, looking at the Box Office Mojo, it had a budget of 30 million, which for the 90s was not that bad, by the way. For the 90s was not that bad. It had $11 million domestic gross and no worldwide grosses here whatsoever. So obviously, as far as video game adaptations go, it failed to really kind of meet its expectations. But according to Rotten Tomatoes, there's a 10% on the tomato meter, 25% audience score, with the general consensus here saying the low budget may explain Wing Commander's cheesy special effects, but can't excuse the lame dialogue or the movie's obsessive reliance on sci-fi cliches. Now, if I recall, the 90s money was a little bit different, so 30 million wasn't like the lowest budget ever. To give you guys an idea of just kind of how things have maybe stretched out a little bit further based upon effects, budgets, and everything else, Joss Whedon's Serenity from 2005 had a $30 million budget and looked excellent. So maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, people generally didn't really care for it, and the movie never got a sequel, even straight to DVD. Now coming over here to Forces of Nature. Ben Affleck, Sandra Bullock, meant to be the big rom-com of not only like the month, but definitely the year. This was bringing two star powers together. Sandra Bullock coming off of Demolition Man and Speed 2, surprisingly. Ben Affleck having done a couple of big movies like Mallrats. I'm saying Mallrats, and of course Dazed and Confused. They were meant to come together for this big romantic movie that ultimately ended up not doing very well. Although it did have a budget of 75 million and a domestic gross of 52 million, it only went on to make 93 million worldwide, which, you know, to many isn't considered a success. Looking over here at Rotten Tomatoes, it's only scoring a 45% on the tomato meter and an audience score of 35%, and there's no critical consensus. And if you've seen Forces of Nature, you can probably understand why there was no critical consensus. Seriously. Coming over here, this movie was one of my favorite movies from the month. I remember when this came out. I remember seeing the trailer. I remember rushing to see it as soon as I could. I know that this poster is garbage, but all the marketing for this movie was relatively garbage outside of the trailer. And I'm talking about Ravenous. And if you don't know this story, basically frontier wildlife, or frontier outpost, cannibalism, all sorts of crazy shit. Good movie. This one went on to gross $2 million off of a $12 million budget. And no worldwide release. I think it pretty much ended up mostly going to home video. This is where I saw it was on home video, but it's definitely one that I really liked the hell out of. I thought it was a violent, gruesome movie and a lot of fun. The critical consensus, though, is a little bit skewered in one way. Tomato meter puts it at 45%. And the audience, though, 78%. Again, this is a movie. Robert Carlyle plays a cannibal who feasts on his victims in order to basically gain their power. And Guy Pearce has to stop him as one by one, people start going down in this outpost. And it was a good take on kind of the Old West stuff. It says here, Ravenous tries bringing cannibal horror into an Old West setting, ending up with an uneven blend that will fail to satisfy most fans of either genre. Again, looking at the audience score, that's obviously not true. The fans out there really seem to like it. And even 20 years later, it's still highly regarded in that particular genre. Then we got this one here. I included it mostly because it's true crime. It's Clint Eastwood in true crime. And at the time, coming off of the 1996 Best Picture win for Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood was putting out movies like all the time. You know, I mean this like literally like all the time. And the thing was, they were very uneven in their reception, but he was putting out like one a year. That's the thing with Clint Eastwood. Most people don't realize is this dude's a workhorse even into his 90s. What we have here is a total production budget of $55 million. Again, he had won Best Picture, so he was going to get these vanity projects with a gross domestic total of $16 million. No worldwide opening numbers here, no worldwide numbers. So clearly that wasn't very good. This would be considered very much a dud, even though it stars James Woods, Dennis Leary, and Lucy Liu, and it was directed by Clint Eastwood. Not everything is going to be a win. And the critical consensus here is 54% on the tomato meter and only 49% from the audience score. But again, those are kind of lower numbers. However, the general consensus is true crime has the potential for a gripping character-driven mystery, but a pedestrian story and a miscast Clint Eastwood undermined its effectiveness. And like I said, this is 20 years ago. Clint Eastwood would have been near 70, if not over 70, working on this movie. You know, so he clearly was trying to be the hero, be the Unforgiven, to go back and recapture Old Glory. And look, the thing is, in some aspects, he's been able to pull that off in certain movies, like Gran Torino from 2008 did a grand job with that, but it's been hit or miss since then. And we can see here by the audience score and the fact that it only did $16 million, $55 million budget, just simply did not pull it in. Then we got this animated movie. I know it's Doug's first movie, right? Everyone back in the 90s, when I was a kid, everyone loved Doug, because Doug was a great show on Nickelodeon from 91 to 94, starring Billy West. Then Disney bought it, rebranded it, brought in a different voice actor, which was totally just jarring, moved it over to ABC Saturday mornings, and it did well. It did well, but the movie itself came out and just failed to connect, I believe, with a lot of the audiences. Because it had, it doesn't say what the production budget was, but it was released on March 26, 1999, which is also my birthday. And it had a total gross of $19 million. And again, this is a Disney movie here. This was a Disney release, no worldwide gross. So obviously it did not do very well. And according to Rotten Tomatoes here, 26% it did. And 29% audience score liked it. Now you got to remember, back in the late 90s, Disney animated movies that weren't the big tentpole Disney animation films did not do very well all the time. There's one of the reasons why Disney dominated the straight to DVD market, simply because they're the home video market, because they knew how to shit these movies out, like Aladdin 2: Return of Jafar, which by the way is one that I've seen multiple times. I like it, but you can see why it's pretty bad. Also coming out on March 26th was Ed TV. Now, this was obviously going to be a take on The Truman Show, which came out the previous year, Jim Carrey's best work, I think, in the 90s, in my opinion. And this was more of a Ron Howard taking the concept of reality TV and really kind of shining a light on where things would be 20 years down the road. I mean, I don't think I know this is more of a take on the real world type series, but ultimately this is where we find ourselves. Look at vlogging on YouTube and reality TV as a whole. But the difference between this and that was this was meant to be presented as real, whereas in where we are with reality TV now and forever has always been completely fake. Now, looking over here at the Box Office Mojo, it says here that it had a production budget of $80 million, a domestic gross of only $22 million, and a worldwide gross of only $35 million. So obviously this movie did not fail to live up to what I believe this was Universal who put this one out. So not to what they wanted it, but it still was a good movie. It had a lot of heart to it. And it gave us a good look at Matthew McConaughey in the kind of lighter-hearted role, something that he is more or less kind of shied away from in the last 20 years. We get a couple of them here and there, but at this point now, he very much wants to be, the big serious actor, of which he's deserved the accolades that he has because he's done a very good job with it. But over here on Rotten Tomatoes, we do see that it has a 64% positive rating. And if what we've seen so far out of this month, there hasn't been a lot that's been positive, but only 30% of the audience liked it based off of 61,000 people, with a general critical consensus saying it's not as ambitious as The Truman Show in satirizing the voyeuristic nature of television. EdTV is an amenable, witty comedy with fine performances from Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, not to mention Jenna Fisher as well as Elizabeth Hurley. And it was, again, it's a good movie. I recommend if you're looking for something that's kind of going to make fun of where we find ourselves now, and just look at it back through that lens of 20 years ago. And you can sit and go, wow, the guys behind this kind of knew what they were looking at, which I find to be very fascinating. Also on March 26, 1999 was The Mod Squad. This was one I also rushed out to go see because it was rated R and I just turned 17. And also I really wanted to see it because Claire Danes, coming off of My So-Called Life, Omar Epps I really liked, Giovanni Ribisi I really liked, and it looked like a dark, gritty movie aimed at my generation. It really was aimed at my generation, but unfortunately it had a $50 million budget and it failed to gross more than 13 million domestic, and it doesn't list a worldwide gross here. Again, total failure of a movie. Unfortunately, looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score, what we see here is 3% on the tomato meter and 17% audience like. That's very bad, with a general critical consensus saying a sodden, overly stylized mess that's even less compelling than a TV episode, which I felt it was better than that. I see what was going on with it. I see what they were doing with it, but ultimately I'm fine with that, right? I'm fine with that. Now, coming into the last week of the month, the last release day of the month, which we're almost at 20 years of as of today. It's March 28th when I'm recording this. 10 Things I Hate About You is as culturally significant to the 1999 movie release year as just the general consensus of where things were at the time as She's All That was, which is one of the reasons why I'm surprised there's no 20th anniversary screening of this that's going on, considering Heath Ledger passed away 9 years later, just about. This movie being an adaptation of Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew and framing it from a rom-com or teenage comedy perspective with a great cast did wonders. It was a fantastic movie in my opinion, and it's one that even 20 years later, I still really like. But it had a budget of 30 million, lower budget, I guess, for that, as we're learning. $38 million brought in from domestic, and a total worldwide gross of 53 million. So still maybe not being what they would consider to be a success or to be a win, but we don't know about what home video brought in. And again, this is coming at the end of the 90s where VHS was still very much a thing. In fact, I have this movie on VHS somewhere, and then, who knows what it did on that particular market. I'd have to go look those numbers up. But according to Rotten Tomatoes here, it gives it a critical consensus of 67% on the tomato meter and 69% from the audience score, with 32 million people having seen it. So obviously, based on a lot of the movies that we've seen looked at this month, a lot more people have seen this one, indicating the level of cultural significance that it has. In fact, even when I still quote this movie when talking about like someone who is popular and I don't quite understand why they're popular. I just quote Heath Ledger and say, what, does she have beer flavored nipples? And most people don't get the reference, but those who do kind of laugh and chuckle because, again, this movie, to me, in my generation, the class of 2000, who were teenagers at the time this came out, this was kind of like one of our Breakfast Clubs, one of our John Hughes type films is what I'm trying to say. But the critical consensus here is Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger add strong performances to an unexpectedly clever script, elevating 10 things slightly above the typical teen fare. I think it's better than that personally, but I can see why people who might have been older at the time didn't latch onto it like the youngins did, I guess, which is weird to say because now I'm in my late 30s. And finally, March 31st, 1999, The Matrix also hit theaters. The Matrix hit theaters nearly 20 years ago in 3 damn days. How weird is it to think that it's been nearly 20 years since the goddamn Matrix? It still holds up, and it's still as impactful on action movies in Hollywood now as it was then. And even though the Wachowskis have never fully been able to recreate its amazingness, it still is a wonderful film. According to Box Office Mojo here, the total budget was $63 million, and it brought in nearly 3 times that with $171 million domestic. I saw this movie like a lot in theaters when it came out, with a total worldwide gross of $463 million, making it an absolute smash for Warner Brothers, which is one of the reasons why in 2003 we got The Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions back to back. The quality of those films, I guess, not quite withstanding, but at the same time, damn, this movie is still just, I need to watch it again. And then also looking at it here is a certified fresh rating of 88% and an audience score of 85% based off of 33 million people having voted on it. And the critical consensus here says, thanks to the Wachowskis' imaginative vision, The Matrix is a smartly crafted combination of spectacular action and groundbreaking special effects. And you know what? That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. The Matrix as a whole is a film that I think really changed things up in regards to sci-fi, action, Hollywood, big budgets, and it really made Keanu Reeves a household name. And I think part of that household name is one of the things that gave us John Wick, as well as helping us get Bill and Ted, which comes out next year. So there's a lot of good that came out of The Matrix, and some bad. Obviously, the sequels didn't live up to the original, but it's, again, such a culturally significant movie that I cannot believe is 20 years old. I got a Blu-ray of it around here somewhere. Hell, for shits and grins, I might go find my VHS copy, see if I could find a way to watch it. No, I'm not that much of a glutton for punishment. I'm going to watch it in the best possible format. Where's my 4K? Do I have a 4K? No, Warner Brothers, send me a 4K. But anyway, look, this was a bit of a, something I wanted to try. Something I wanted to put together. Looking at the movies that released through the month of March 1999. I keep screwing that one up. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know your thoughts in below. Let me know if you guys made it this far. If you guys made it this far, do me a favor, just type in March in the chat so I know. Toss the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to 3 Buck Theater if you're new. And if you want to see more of these, you want me to dive into April and take a look at what released in April, let me know down in the comments, and I will talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.